They say some battles begin with a storm, but ours started with a single piece of paper taped to our door. A $3,500 fine, not for loud music, not for damaging property, not even for breaking any real rule. It was for something as simple as planting roses in our front yard. Roses my wife, Laura, had cared for with her whole heart after her mother passed away. Those roses were her mother's favorite, a living memory she wanted close to her. When she found the notice, Laura's hands trembled. She pressed the paper to her chest and whispered, "All this just because I planted flowers?" I looked at her, my heart aching. "Honey, don't let it get to you. They can't just bully us like this." But we both knew the HOA president, Karen, thrived on control. She strutted through the neighborhood like she owned it, waving her clipboard as though it were a scepter. Everyone feared her but Laura. She wasn't afraid. Laura calmly placed the paper on the counter. "I'm not paying it," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Those roses mean more to me than Karen's rules." That's when the war began. The next day, Karen herself showed up. Her sharp knock rattled the glass in the front door. Laura opened it, and Karen stood there with her arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her nose, though it wasn't even sunny. "Mrs. James," she said, her tone dripping with superiority, "you've ignored the notice. Payment is due immediately." Laura folded her arms, standing tall. "Those roses aren't hurting anyone. They stay." Karen smirked. "If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to escalate this. We can make your life very unpleasant." I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "You've already made it unpleasant, Karen. You can leave now." She turned sharply, heels clicking against the pavement. But her parting words floated back like poison. "You'll regret this." That night, Laura sat quietly by the window, staring at the roses. I sat beside her, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. "Do you ever wonder why people like her do this?" she asked softly. "Because power makes them feel important," I said. "But remember, truth has its own power, and it doesn't need to shout." Laura leaned against me. "I just don't want to fight forever. I want peace. And I want Mom's memory here, alive in those flowers." My chest tightened with emotion. I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "We'll fight, but only as much as we have to. You're not alone in this." The storm came sooner than we expected. 3 nights later, we heard the sound of police sirens outside our house. Flashing lights painted the walls. We looked at each other in disbelief. When we opened the door, 2 officers stood there. Behind them, Karen hovered like a vulture, arms folded, lips twisted into a grin. "Evening, folks," one officer said. "We received a complaint that you've refused to comply with neighborhood ordinances. Can we come in and discuss this?" Laura's jaw clenched, but her voice was calm. "Officers, with all due respect, this isn't a criminal matter. It's a personal vendetta." "She's abusing her position," Karen cut in sharply. "They're breaking HOA law. They think they're above the rules." The younger officer frowned, glancing at the paper Karen handed him. He looked back at Laura, then at me. "This doesn't seem like a police issue," he muttered. But Karen wasn't done. "Arrest them for trespassing on HOA property. Their yard belongs to the community." The words were so outrageous I almost laughed, but Laura didn't laugh. She stood tall, her eyes blazing, and spoke with a steady voice that carried more authority than Karen could ever muster. "Officers," she said, "I'll be seeing this matter in court soon enough, and I can assure you it will not end the way Karen thinks." Karen's grin faltered for the first time, because she didn't yet know the truth. My wife. Loretha, woman she had tried to intimidate and humiliate, wasn't just a homeowner. She was a judge, and Karen was about to learn a lesson she'd never forget. The morning after the police visit, our phone started buzzing with messages from neighbors. Some were whispers of sympathy, others curious questions. Apparently, Karen had been going door to door, boasting about how she had put us in our place, but the truth. The officers hadn't arrested us. They hadn't even taken Karen's side. They left with a shrug, probably shaking their heads at the absurdity of it all. Still, Karen spun her own version of the story. and like wildfire, rumors spread across the neighborhood. That afternoon, I found Laura in the garden, her hands gently brushing the petals of her roses. Her face looked tired, but her eyes carried a fire I'd only seen a few times before, usually when she walked into her courtroom, robed and resolute. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She nodded, though her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm fine. But Karen is poking a sleeping bear, and she doesn't even know it." I chuckled. "Should we tell her?" Laura shook her head. "No, not yet. Sometimes letting people dig their own hole teaches them more than a warning ever could." 2 days later, another letter arrived, this time thicker, folded in a crisp envelope. It wasn't just another fine. It was a notice of lien threatening to place a claim on our home if we didn't pay up. My stomach twisted. A lien over roses? Laura read it slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she exhaled and placed it on the counter. "She's officially crossed the line. This isn't just petty anymore. This is abuse of power." I couldn't hold back my frustration. How can one woman cause this much misery? Doesn't she have anything better to do? Laura looked at me, calm but firm. "People like Karen thrive on control, but she's forgotten something important: control without justice crumbles." That evening, we attended the HOA meeting. The room buzzed with low chatter as neighbors filled the folding chairs. At the front, Karen sat like a queen at her throne, her gavel resting on the table as though she had authority to use it. As soon as we walked in, her voice rang out. "Ah, the delinquents have arrived." A ripple of awkward laughter echoed through the room. My fists clenched, but Laura laid a gentle hand on my arm, steadying me. She spoke with measured calm. "We're here to address the unfair fines and the harassment that's followed." "This has gone far enough," Karen smirked. "You have no power here. You broke the rules, and you'll pay. That's the way it works." From the back, a neighbor whispered loudly enough for all to hear. "It's flowers, Karen, not a crime." Another voice chimed in. "Yeah, they're beautiful. Why are you so obsessed?" For the first time, Karen's composure cracked. Her cheeks flushed red, and she banged the gavel like she was presiding over the Supreme Court. "Order. Order. This is my meeting." Laura met her eyes, unflinching. "Actually, Karen, it's the community's meeting. And you don't own the community." The room went silent. A few people nodded in quiet agreement. Karen's lips pressed tight, her jaw working furiously by the end of the night. It was clear Karen wasn't going to back down. If anything, she was more determined. She leaned across the table, her voice a low growl meant only for Laura. "I'll see you in court," she spat. Laura tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "Yes," she said softly, almost kindly. "You will." The weeks that followed were a blur of escalating tactics. Karen filed formal complaints, sent threatening letters, even tried to organize the neighborhood against us. But with every step she took, more cracks appeared in her armor. Neighbors grew weary of her constant drama. Some quietly visited us, offering words of support. One elderly man even left a small card in our mailbox that read, "Stand strong. Truth always wins." One evening, as Laura and I sipped tea on the porch, I asked, "Why haven't you told her who you are? Why not end this now?" Laura's eyes softened, thoughtful. "Because sometimes the most powerful lessons aren't delivered by force. They're delivered by realization." Karen needs to see the mirror for herself. The day of the hearing finally arrived. Karen strutted into the courthouse like a conquering general. Surrounded by a couple of board members who looked more nervous than loyal, she carried her folders and binders like trophies, confident that victory was already hers. I walked beside Laura, my heart pounding. She looked calm, collected, her steps steady. There was no sign of nerves, only quiet strength. When the clerk called the case and Karen turned toward the bench, her smile widened until it froze on her face. Because the judge entering the courtroom was none other than my wife, Laura, her robe flowing, her presence commanding, her gavel resting in her hand with the true authority Karen had always pretended to hold. The color drained from Karen's face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, the woman who thrived on control realized she had none. And in that moment, I knew everything was about to change. The hush in the courtroom was deafening. Every eye shifted between Karen's pale face and Laura's calm presence on the bench. For once, Karen wasn't in charge. She wasn't the one with the gavel. She wasn't the one people had to obey. Laura adjusted her glasses, her expression steady, her voice clear and formal. This court is now in session. Case number 1127. Homeowners Association versus James. Karen's jaw worked furiously. She leaned toward one of her board members, whispering harshly, "This is a conflict of interest. She can't preside over this." But Laura's voice cut through her protests like a knife. "Mrs. Carter, please step forward." Karen froze, her eyes wide. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just Karen, the HOA president. In this room, she was simply a defendant in front of a judge. Karen rose stiffly, clutching her binder. Her heels clicked against the floor, each step sounding weaker than the last. She stood at the podium, her shoulders tight, her arrogance visibly crumbling. "Your Honor," she stammered, "with all due respect, you cannot possibly remain impartial. This is... Laura raised a hand. "Mrs. Carter, today is not about me. It's about the truth. If you believe the law is on your side, you'll have nothing to fear." The room buzzed with whispers. Neighbors filled the benches, having come out of curiosity after weeks of gossip. Some leaned forward eagerly, others folded their arms. Waiting to see how it would all unfold, Karen opened her binder and began reading her accusations, her voice quivering. They planted unauthorized vegetation. It disrupts the uniform appearance of the neighborhood. They refused to comply with multiple notices. They disregarded fines. This is flagrant disrespect for our rules. Her words echoed, but they fell flat. No fire, no confidence, just paper-thin arguments. Laura's tone remained measured. "And what harm did these roses cause, Mrs. Carter?" Karen blinked. "Hell, yes," Laura pressed. "Did they damage property? Endanger anyone? Lower property values? Or is this simply about control?" The silence stretched. Karen's lips parted, but no answer came. Then Laura turned to the neighbors sitting in the audience. "Anyone here who wishes to provide testimony may step forward." To Karen's horror, several people stood. First came Mrs. Thompson, a widow in her 70s. Her voice shook with emotion. "Your Honor, those roses? They're beautiful. Every morning I walk past that house and they remind me of my late husband. He used to bring me roses. I can't tell you how much they brighten my day." She dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief as Karen shifted uncomfortably. Next came a young father, holding his little daughter's hand. "My little girl loves those roses. Every time we walk the dog, she runs up to smell them. They bring joy to the neighborhood, not harm." His daughter piped up softly, "They're my favorite flowers." The courtroom softened. Smiles spread across the benches. Karen's binder trembled in her hands. "This is irrelevant," she snapped. "This is about rules, not feelings." Laura's gaze sharpened. "Rules exist to serve people, Mrs. Carter, not the other way around. When rules become weapons, they cease to be just." The words struck deep. Even I felt a chill. Finally, Laura addressed Karen directly. Her tone softened, carrying not anger, but something deeper - disappointment. Double quotes, "Mrs. Carter, do you know why my wife planted those roses?" Karen frowned, caught off guard. Because she wanted to break uniformity?" Laura shook her head gently. "No, she planted them in honor of her late mother. Those roses are more than flowers. They are memories. They are love alive in a garden." Gasps echoed through the room. Karen's eyes darted nervously, but she couldn't hide from the truth. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Laura spoke the words everyone had been waiting for. "This court finds the fines unlawful, the lien invalid, and the actions of the HOA abusive in nature. The case is dismissed." Bang! The gavel fell. A wave of relief washed over me. Neighbors clapped softly. some even wiping away tears. But the spotlight was still on Karen. Her face was crimson, her binder clutched like a shield. For once, she had no witty comeback, no sharp retort, just silence. Laura's final words pierced the quiet. "Mrs. Carter, authority is not about control. It's about responsibility. Remember that." Karen lowered her head, humiliated, as we walked out of the courtroom. Neighbors approached us, offering hugs, smiles, and words of support. "Your roses are a blessing," one woman said warmly. "You stood up for all of us," another whispered. Laura smiled graciously, though I could see the weight of the battle in her eyes. When we reached the car, I squeezed her hand. "You were incredible in there." She looked at me, her gaze soft. "I wasn't there to win, David. I was there to remind her and everyone that kindness matters more than control." I kissed her hand gently. "And you did. More than you know." Yet as we drove home, I couldn't help but wonder, would Karen truly learn her lesson? Or would this only deepen her resentment? Time would tell. But one thing was certain, the roses would keep blooming. A silent reminder that love and memory outlasts even the harshest storms. And for the first time in weeks, I saw Laura smile, not just with her lips, but with her whole heart. The battle was over. But the lesson? That was just beginning. The weeks after the courtroom victory felt different, lighter. Our house seemed brighter. Not because anything had changed physically, but because the shadow Karen had cast over us had finally lifted. Neighbors stopped by often. Some came to admire the roses, others just to chat, but most came with something deeper in their voices: gratitude. Gratitude that someone had stood up against unfairness, not with fists or fury, but with quiet strength. Laura accepted their kind words humbly. She never boasted about being the judge. She never reminded them of the scene in court. She just smiled and said, sometimes it only takes one act of standing firm to remind people that kindness is worth fighting for. One Saturday morning, I found Laura kneeling by the roses, trimming away the wilted petals. She was humming softly, her hands steady and gentle. I joined her, handing her the small basket we always used to gather the clippings. "You know," I said, "I think your mom would be proud. These roses aren't just surviving, they're thriving." Laura paused, her eyes softening. She always said roses teach you patience. You can't rush them. You have to nurture them. And in the end, they bloom beautifully. Her voice caught, just for a second, and I squeezed her shoulder. "You've nurtured more than flowers, Laura. You've nurtured hope. Not just for us, but for this whole neighborhood." She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Maybe that's what Mom wanted all along, but not everyone had disappeared from the story. A week later, there was another knock at our door. Not sharp, not demanding, just hesitant, almost timid. When I opened it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Karen stood there, her clipboard gone, her shoulders slumped, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Can I speak with you?" she asked quietly. Laura appeared beside me, her expression unreadable. "Of course." "Come in." Karen stepped inside, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She didn't sit right away, just stood awkwardly, wringing her hands. Finally, she spoke. I came to apologize. I let power get the better of me. I thought I was protecting the community, but really, I was just trying to control it. And I hurt you both in the process." Her voice cracked on the last words. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Laura broke it, her voice gentle. "Karen, rules have their place. But when they strip away compassion, they lose their meaning. What you did wasn't about roses. It was about control." Karen lowered her head, nodding slowly. "I know." And standing in that courtroom, seeing you on the bench, she realized how blind I'd been. The rules I clung to so tightly didn't matter when they destroyed people. She lifted her eyes, tears shimmering. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I regret it." For a long moment, Laura just studied her. Then she stood, walked to the kitchen, and returned with a small vase filled with freshly cut roses. She set it gently on the table between them. "These are for you," Laura said softly. not as a reward, but as a reminder. Every thorn has its flower. It's up to us which we focus on. Karen's lips trembled. She reached out, her fingers brushing the petals, and for the first time, her tough facade broke. Tears slid down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. After she left, I turned to Laura, still stunned. "You forgave her." "Just like that?" Laura smiled faintly. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting David. It means choosing peace over bitterness. We can't control what she does next, but we can control how we respond." Her words sank deep into me. And for the first time, I truly understood the strength that had carried her through the storm. As the summer stretched on, the roses bloomed fuller than ever. Neighbors often stopped by with their kids, their pets, or just their smiles. The garden had become a quiet sanctuary, not just for us, but for everyone who needed a reminder that beauty still existed in the world. One evening, we hosted a small gathering. Neighbors brought pies, salads, and laughter. Children played tag in the yard while adults sat on the porch. Sharing stories, I noticed Karen among them, sitting quietly with the vase of roses in her lap. She wasn't barking orders. She wasn't carrying her clipboard. She was just another neighbor, listening, learning, and perhaps healing. Laura caught me watching and leaned in close. "See, sometimes even the hardest hearts can soften." As the night wound down, Laura stood and addressed the group. "These roses started as a memory of my mother," she said, her voice carrying warmth. "But they've become something bigger. They've become a reminder that compassion matters more than control, and that community is built on love, not fear." She looked at each face, her eyes shining. "We all carry thorns, but we also carry the power to bloom. Let's choose the bloom." The crowd fell silent, then burst into gentle applause. Some wiped tears, others simply nodded. It was a moment that would stay with us all. Later that night, as Laura and I sat on the porch watching the stars, she rested her head on my shoulder. "You know," I said softly, "this story isn't about Karen anymore. It's about roses. It's about love. It's about you," she smiled, her eyes closing. "No, David. It's about us. And about anyone who's ever had to fight for something they love." The roses swayed gently in the night breeze, their fragrance drifting through the air like a quiet hymn. And I knew then the real victory wasn't in the courtroom, or in winning against Karen. It was in planting something beautiful, nurturing it with love, and watching it inspire others to do the same. That's the lesson the roses taught us. And it's the lesson I hope stays with anyone who hears our story.